Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. Hey, I'm back. Good to be back. So want to go ahead and actually get to a little bit of college hoops recruiting news. Now, on Friday, we did a couple college hoops recruiting updates, and there was a big one that I absolutely forgot that I was planning on getting to here on Monday, and that is what happened what happened in Bloomington, Indiana, over the weekend. So Indiana, listen, it's not just a football school anymore, okay? Indiana's destroying everybody in football, 4-0. They should be ranked in the top 25. That's another conversation. But on top of that, Indiana also had what many people were calling the biggest recruiting weekend in the history of Indiana basketball this previous weekend. 5-star Brillan Mullins from the state of Indiana on campus for an official visit. Eric Reibe, 4-star DC area. Everybody wants him. Kansas, UConn on campus for an Indiana visit. And oh, by the way, Trent Sisley, 4-star wing, originally from Indiana, now playing at Montverde Academy, all on campus this weekend. So as I said, the plan was to do a little bit of a reaction to that, kind of figure out, okay, where does recruiting stand with all three of these guys? What could Indiana's class potentially look like when it's all said and done? But before I could even fire up the old recording machine here, we got news on Monday morning that we don't have to wait to start reacting to what happened this weekend in Bloomington. That is because I want to say it was around noon Eastern time. Trent Sisley, 4-star wing, originally from Indiana, as I just said, now at Montverde Academy. He was on campus this weekend. He waited no more time. And on Monday, he officially committed to Indiana. So I want to go ahead and dive into that. But also beyond that, let's call a spade a spade. I've been covering college sports a long time, and the one thing I know is that as exciting as recruiting is, the most exciting part of recruiting is always figuring out what's next. So Trent Sisley is in the bag. What does it mean for his former AAU teammate, Brillan Mullins? What does it mean for Eric Reibe? And is there another 5-star that could potentially be in the mix for Indiana? By the way, as always, make sure you're following our Torres on Indiana page for all things late-breaking Indiana news. We have a great Indiana student that helps me run it. Oh, by the way, we still got a few of our Mike F. and Woodson t-shirts as well available at AaronTorresOnline.com. But let's go ahead and dive in. This Trent Sisley thing to me is a big deal. And first off, wild recruitment. This kid was offered by both Indiana and Purdue before he ever played a high school game, okay? So you talk about a recruitment that has been going on for a while. Offered, late 2020, early 20, I think it was 2021 at some point. Yeah, that would have been right before his high school career started. So I bring it up because this recruitment has been going on for a long time. And credit Indiana, well, credit really both sides, right? Credit Indiana for staying on him throughout the past 4 years. Also credit this kid for remaining an elite high-level player at the high school level, right? A lot of times kids get ranked as 7th graders, 8th graders. By the time they're seniors in high school, they aren't the player that we thought they would be. This kid is every bit as good as anyone was projecting 3-4 years ago. In terms of the player, I think Indiana fans know it. But for those who don't or haven't seen him play or whatever, as I said, 6'7". I think he's probably a little bit more athletic than people give him credit for. Gets up and down, can defend, switchable, wing player, multiple positions. And then to me, the most important element of his game, heck of a three-point shooter. Shot over 40% on the circuit this summer, playing for Indiana Elite, again, alongside Brillan Mullins, alongside current Kentucky commit Malachi Moreno. And so you get a 6'7" dude that can knock down shots. That is big anywhere. Let me take it a step further. I think it's big for Indiana. This is a very important commitment for them, okay? Because the bottom line, we know about Indiana. We know the knock on Mike Woodson. I think some of it is sort of unfair that he doesn't recruit shooting or that he can't develop shooting or the offense doesn't, complement or accentuate shooting. Again, I think some of it's a little bit overrated. I think some of the guys they brought in this year are proof like they're going to shoot better than they have in the past. but to bring in a 6'7" dude that can hit shots at the clip that Trent Sisley can, an Indiana kid, I think that's huge. The other thing that's worth noting, listen, I'm not here to put a time frame or a ceiling on anybody, but this kid kind of projects as probably a 3 to 4 year college player. Now, if he's way better, that's great. But Indiana kid comes to the program. He's going to be about the right things, the place he wants to be, near home. And I don't think this is one of those, sometimes in college basketball, we talk about the churn of rosters. We talk about April. Everybody gets excited for portal season. Bottom line is all of the best teams, they're developing guys internally. They're maintaining guys internally. Look at UConn. Look at Marquette. Look at, honestly, Indiana fans, I hate to say it, but look at Purdue. All these elite programs right now that are winning at the highest level are recruiting and developing within their program. Now, you still got to go to the portal. If you're UConn, you still got to go get a Cam Spencer. You got to go get a Tristan Newton, whatever. But at the same time, there are guys in the program that are developing within. So this is big. Trent Sisley is really good. But I think the question every Indiana fan wants to know is who is next and what kind of impact did this weekend have on the other players that were on campus and maybe some that weren't on campus but could be in the mix here at Indiana. So first off, let's start with Brillan Mullins. Brillan Mullins, to me, I don't know if it's just, listen, I'm a UConn alum, just putting it out there. Indiana following, Kentucky following, Carolina following. This just feels like a recruitment that everybody cannot get enough of in terms of information. Really talented player, 6'5", wing. Many believe he's the best three-point shooter in all of high school basketball. But as far as his recruitment concerned, where is Indiana in the mix? I'll be transparent. I think Indiana is in that upper tier. I don't believe there's necessarily a definitive leader at this point. Should mention, by the way, we're recording here about 3 p.m. Eastern time. So, listen, he is expected to cut his list any moment now. When he does, I think the 5 obvious schools, he says he's cutting it to 5, are probably the 5 schools that he's already taken visits to. Has taken a visit to UConn. There's very much those two sides are very much interested in each other, okay? He visited in August. It's worth noting Dan Hurley, Luke Murray, the assistant coaching staff, has come out to Indiana multiple times during September to watch and evaluate this kid. One thing I can tell you with Dan Hurley, I respect this about him. He is not afraid to pivot if there is a guy that he just feels like isn't interested. They're not going to get him. They'll just move on to the next guy. Not that they don't want a player, but if they don't think they're going to get him, they'll just move on. So the fact that he's been out to Indiana multiple times this month tells me that he believes that UConn is very much in the mix. Beyond that, I'll say this. Carolina, by the way, did I mention, I think I did with Brillan Mullins, but if I didn't, has already visited UConn, Carolina, Indiana, Michigan, and is expected to visit Kentucky later this in October for Big Blue Madness. So I just bring that up to say, as I'm recording, he has not yet cut his list to 5, but those are the 5 that I expect to be. UConn, which we just talked about, Michigan, North Carolina, Indiana, Kentucky. And so when I look at the rest of Brillan Mullins' list, couple things. One, just explained UConn. I'll say this from the North Carolina perspective. I think that North Carolina feels like they're in really good shape, and they probably should. North Carolina is a blue blood. They offer everything. They put guys in the pros. But as important as anything, North Carolina is going to have playing time available at the exact spot that Brillan Mullins plays next season. RJ Davis finally runs out of eligibility this year. Shooting guard, reigning ACC player of the year. Ian Jackson will probably be a one and done. So there's going to be spots in the backcourt. There are going to be opportunities to play right away. And like I said, I think North Carolina feels like they're in pretty good shape for this kid. Beyond that, Michigan, I think Michigan's kind of a quiet dark horse. Heard my buddy Mark Zanetto say this. Mark Zanetto hosts the Locked On UConn podcast, does an amazing job with that show. He brought it up the other day on his show. He said, look, Dusty May is an Indiana guy. He may coach at Michigan, but he's got those Indiana roots. He's got that Indiana sensibility. And the way that Mark explained it, he thinks that Michigan is a dark horse because he believes there's a real relationship that's been built between that coaching staff and, of course, Brillan Mullins. And finally, let's talk a little bit about Kentucky before we get to Indiana. Because with Kentucky, I would say of the 5, they're probably on the outside looking in. But remember, Brillan Mullins canceled a visit to Kansas last week, canceled a visit to Duke last week. So if there was 0% chance that Kentucky was in the mix, he would have just canceled this visit. I don't think this kid wants to waste anybody's time, anyone's whatever. And so to me, I think Kentucky is still in the mix. They are probably the closest thing to an outsider right now. They have taken a commitment from Jasper Johnson. He's another player that's more off the ball than on. But again, if this kid's visiting Kentucky, I believe they're in the mix, which brings us to Indiana. As I said, I don't think there's a leader right now. I think this kid is taking his time. I think he's taking his visits. I think he's taking it all in. I think he's trying to figure out, where do I fit in with these programs? How do they want to play? But you look at Indiana, couple things. Going to be plenty of playing opportunity next year. There's going to be, by the way, it's the home state school, about an hour from where you grew up. And listen, it's hard for an Indiana kid to say no to Indiana. On top of that, obviously, it's worth noting, Trent Sisley commits on Monday. That's why we started. That's where we started this conversation. Well, Trent Sisley, of course, played AAU ball with Brillan Mullins. Like, I think I've even been guilty of spending a little bit too much time talking about Malachi Moreno, the Kentucky commitment who played AAU basketball with Brillan Mullins, and not enough time acknowledging that Trent Sisley did as well. And if you don't think that's going to have an impact on Brillan Mullins, I don't know what to tell you. So I'm rambling. Could go on, but it doesn't change the fact that, to me, it feels as though Indiana's in the mix as much as anybody. Let's talk really quickly about Eric Reibe. Reibe's an interesting one. 7-footer, a player that I think was a little bit under-recruited, and I don't mean this disparagingly to the program that took the lead early with him, but was a kid that just you didn't hear a lot of buzz about going into the summer. Then he blows up, gets offers from everybody, and in the last couple of weeks has cut his list. Another guy cut Kentucky off his list when Malachi Moreno committed. Cut North Carolina off his list as well. Well, I bring it up because Eric Reibe now, he is the belle of the ball and everybody wants him. Creighton was the one that was in early on him and looked like a heavy leader to start things. And Greg McDermott's not going down without a fight. Saw that he was actually in, or was expected to be in, to visit with Eric Reibe on Monday of this week. So we'll see if that happens, but that is a big one. Creighton is not backing down. UConn, another one. We just talked about UConn. We just talked about the fact that Dan Hurley, when he sinks his little talons into something, he's not going to back off. UConn had the ultimate flex a few weeks ago, by the way. I think every college basketball fan knows this, but UConn went to the White House. The White House, of course, honors the previous year's national championship teams. Dan Hurley and his staff went right to Eric Reibe's high school to, give him a quick shout out, to spend some time with him in the same suit that they wore to the White House. That is the ultimate recruiting flex. So, UConn's in the mix there, and Kansas is in the mix as well. So for Indiana, backs against the wall, that's one that I don't feel, if Brillan Mullins, I think, is totally wide open. I don't know that I feel great that Eric Reibe is definitively going to be at Indiana, but I don't think there's 0% chance either. Thought it was worth noting, by the way. He mentioned, he did an interview, I want to say it was the Daily Hoosier, maybe, the Indiana student newspaper, give them some credit, where he said, look, playing time early is going to be a factor for me. Well, we know Indiana's losing Umar Bala. We know Mackenzie Mbako almost certainly will go pro after his sophomore year this year. And by the way, Malik Renew, we'll see what happens with him. But there's going to be opportunities in the front court, specifically at that 5 spot. So, I kind of sit there and wonder if that's an opportunity that is going to be appealing to Eric Reibe. Finally, it is at least worth acknowledging there is another 5-star that was not on campus this weekend that feels like Indiana is in the mix down the stretch, okay? So that's obviously, Indiana fans know, Jaylen Harrelson, 5-star, originally from Fishers Island, Indiana. Is that right? Fishers Island, Indiana? Indiana fans, correct me. But first of all, shout out to Mike Woodson, because in a year where he needs some positive vibes off the court, great portal class, but now he's got a loaded 2025 class with a bunch of Indiana kids, Indiana ties, etc. Well, I bring it up because Jaylen Harrelson's another player, 6'6", 5-star player. He's playing at La Lumiere right now, but originally from about an hour from Indiana's campus. And he's one that he said last week, I'm in decision-making mode. I am ready to start figuring out where I want to go. What's worth noting with him as well, he canceled a couple visits too. So he's, when you start, let me backtrack. When you see a kid starting to cancel visits, that's when you know. You're like, oh, it's getting serious here. Canceled a visit to Kansas. Canceled a visit to Purdue. And so it feels like that one is coming down to Notre Dame, Michigan State, Indiana. I would put Notre Dame at third, and I think that's kind of an Indiana, Michigan State kind of back and forth. We'll see where it goes. But you talk about what could be a couple big weeks for Mike effing Woodson and the Hoosiers. I think they're in great shape with Brillan Mullins. I think they're in great shape with Jaylen Harrelson. We'll see on Eric Reibe. And oh, by the way, they get the commitment from Trent Sisley on Monday morning, afternoon, whenever it was. Big time to be a Hoosier. Football team's unbeatable. Picking up big-time recruits with maybe more to come. Appreciate everybody's support. If you are not subscribed to the Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel, make sure to do so. New clips, new videos going up every single day. We go live every Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday. And oh, by the way, if you're not following our Torres on Indiana account, Torres on Indiana on Twitter, appreciate your support. Mike F. and Woodson t-shirts available as